Hello, welcome to episode 186 of Herpetological Highlights. My name's Tom Major. Co-hosting with me is Ben Marshall. And in our 186th instalment, we're going to be talking about reptile hibernation. So this is a result of a Patreon request. We had a request from Paul. Paul wanted a deep dive on hibernation. And so I think it is quite a deep dive that we're taking. Certainly it was...
if by deep dive you mean like me subjecting myself to drowning, yeah.
Yeah. I felt like I was drowning also reading this paper. It was way out of my comfort zone. So yeah, this might be one that we get corrections on if there are any actual geneticists worth their salt listening. But either way, it was pretty cool. We're talking about bearded dragons, which, you know, I think they're universally popular. I've never had anyone say they don't like bearded dragons in my vicinity. I think
that would be shameful anyway. You never could. Yeah, the Court of Public Appeal would never allow it.
Yeah, it's a disgrace if you don't like them. They're just cool little dragon lizards. And yeah, this is a relatively recent research paper back in 2019 detailing how hibernation is, or how they control their bodies during hibernation using their genes. So I'll introduce the paper. It's by Capraro, Amelie, Waters, Patel, Georges, and Waters, 2019. Waking the Sleeping Dragon. Gene expression profiling reveals adaptive strategies of the hibernating reptile Pogona vitticeps. Published in BMC Genomics. So Pogona vitticeps is the central bearded dragon from Australia. And yeah, this is a paper all about their hibernation. Hibernation in mammals, reasonably well understood from my limited understanding of mammalian hibernation. But according to this paper, at least, it's less well understood in reptiles. And so
Classic.
The opposite. Yeah, I mean, I think we probably say that every episode. But the point of this study was to kind of shed light on how these reptiles manage hibernation, but at a tiny, tiny scale. The scale of molecules, the scale of genes. And yeah, this study kind of investigated how genes and proteins play a role in reptiles surviving hibernation, which is, you know, a pretty major undertaking for any animal. Okay, you're going to, like, in many ways, sort of not shut your body down, but you're going to
as close as you can get, pretty much. Like, it's pretty damn near it. I think anything more extreme would be equivalent to a coma.
Yeah, it's one of those things which we really, as humans, we don't really have an analog for. Like, we don't do anything even remotely close to hibernating at all. Yeah, like you say, the closest we come is probably a coma, which is another thing I don't really understand the mechanisms of what a coma is. Maybe it's similar to hibernation, maybe not. But yeah, we don't really do anything which is even remotely similar to hibernation, so it seems strange and alien to us, even though animals which are a bit more similar to us do it. You know, like a bear. Bears hibernate, but we definitely don't really hibernate, and so it seems very strange and alien. And yeah, like we say, we don't really know that much about how reptiles successfully do it.
Before you dive in proper, I just want to jump on the hibernation word, because I'm sure there's this, I don't know, do reptiles hibernate or do they brumate? And they have it in the intro of how those two words sort of differ. And the impression I'm getting from their definition comparison is that your brumation is these periods of torpor, so sort of chilling down near sort of shutdown / slowing down of metabolism and whatnot, sort of interspersed with periods of activity or some sort of active intervention to regulate the body, so you don't just, you know, it's cold-blooded animals, right? They need a little bit. If you just send yourself into a deep torporous sleep, you're going to need something to sort of help you out of it at the end. So if you were to do that with little sort of inserts of warming yourself up, you could essentially hibernate for a longer term. But it's this sort of intermittentness, which is termed brumation, right?
Okay, yeah, I've always been a bit unclear on the difference. I'd sort of used them interchangeably, and I've read a lot of debates about it online, and I've never really felt like I've understood the difference.
And these guys sort of commit to the just using hibernation, because a lot of things that were traditionally considered hibernators, as in hibernating mammals, they specifically mentioned tenrecs, actually have a pattern which is very similar to brumation. So if you had your definition based on mammals and how they hibernate, and there's mammals that hibernate in a way that's equivalent to brumation, then they're equivalent terms, and therefore they just commit to hibernation as a term throughout, which I think is fine. It certainly does seem like brumation is a color of hibernation. So, you know.
So the take home message is brumation is like an interrupted shorter period version of hibernation.
Yeah, less consistent, but hibernation in the past has been used to describe basically brumation patterns as well, it seems. So I don't think it really matters that much, but hibernation seems to be the more umbrella term and therefore probably safer to use.
Okay, cool. So this was more just in anticipation of people getting in touch with us and being like, "You idiots! This is brumation."
Well,
we can say we think it's kind of more hibernation.
Just sort of heading off at the pass. People being like, "Huh! I thought reptiles didn't hibernate. I thought they brumated." But I think that's a sort of not. It seems like it's just like Venn diagram that's almost completely overlapping.
Right. Okay. Cool. So when they are hibernating, in this case, they undergo changes in their gene expression. That is the kind of crux of this paper, that gene expression can vary. So your DNA contains code to make proteins, but not all of your genes, which are these protein encoding portions of your DNA that are in charge of making your proteins, not all of them are active in all areas of the body all of the time. It can vary depending on which part of the body the gene is located in, and it can also vary over time depending on the kind of experience or what's going on with the animal. So you've got different genes being expressed or like actually used in different areas of the body, and that is the kind of crux of this paper. And in hibernating animals, altering this expression of the genes, so which genes are doing different things, can allow them to change the functioning of their bodies in quite fundamental ways. And that is what they were investigating here. They were investigating how this gene expression of bearded dragons changes during hibernation. And to do that, they looked at this Australian central bearded dragon, so that's Pogona vitticeps. They were looking at the dragons late during the hibernation, so they would have been hibernating for a while. They looked at them again 2 days post-arousal to see what their gene expression was doing then. And then they looked again 2 months post-arousal, so the bearded dragons should by then be like fully awake, back to normal. And they wanted to see if there were changes in how their genes were being expressed through these 3 periods to try and understand what the dragons themselves are actually doing internally to try and sort of potentially protect themselves from this massive period of inactivity.
Yeah, just enabling themselves to do it. I think it's going to require these changes just to pull off hibernation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean it's a fundamentally different. It's a fundamentally different life state. Like it needs a bit of apparently it needs a bit of genetic planning for, as it turns out. And so what they did was they identified which genes were kind of expressed differently in these different periods. And just in terms of numbers, we're talking about thousands of genes in each case being expressed differently between these different periods. So yeah, it was like over 4,000 differences in the brain, 5,000, over 5,000 differences in the heart, and over 5,000 in the skeletal muscle. And those are the kind of 3 areas they looked at: the brain, the heart, and the skeletal muscle. And essentially when they looked to see how genes were being expressed differently in these 3 areas, they discovered that a lot of these genes were related to kind of protective mechanisms which could help the animal survive hibernation, survive these like extreme changes that they're experiencing.
Yeah, I think that's what I got from the paper too, is that it's mostly tailored towards dealing with this quite sudden change, like in and out of hibernation, this sort of rapid ramping up of metabolism activity, and anything that's sort of intense in terms of change and sort of chemical reaction essentially is going to require some sort of multiple protective mechanisms so it doesn't wreck what you're doing. It's like exercising without warming up, right? You suddenly throw a lot of activity into something, it's going to get damaged.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to the whole warming up thing though. I think it's a myth.
Well, it's a useful analogy regardless.
Yeah. But they're going through this state, and crucially, when they're going into hibernation, everything's slowing down, and then when they're coming out, it's like all speeding up. And there's a few different things. So I reckon what makes most sense is to kind of go through the kind of areas in which they identify changes occurring and just kind of talk about how they affect the lizards. Starting with the brain.
Start with the brain,
point.
The powerhouse of the lizard.
The powerhouse of the lizard, such as it is. So they essentially have these mechanisms to prevent their nerve cells getting overstimulated during hibernation, which can apparently be harmful. So they don't want their brains to be getting overstimulated. So they reduce because like if you're not moving around but your brain's still fully active, that just feels like the wrong way to go about it. You need to calm the brain down. You need to simmer that brain down. And so they reduce the activity of certain receptors. And that is supposed to protect against damage. So they kind of activate these pathways that modify proteins that are involved in communication between nerve cells. That reduces the amount of stimulation the lizards are receiving. And that to me sounds really strange. Like that is something which, can you imagine a situation where your body is actively modifying how stimulated your nerves get in your brain? What does that feel like?
I have no idea, but it must have a sensation, right? It's so sort of core to self-awareness.
Yeah.
That surely there's got to be an experience alongside something so fundamental.
Maybe it's like when you first wake up and you feel a bit groggy. Maybe it's like that times 1,000. You're just
backwards, you become groggier and groggier.
Yeah, and you're so dimly aware. I mean, it sounds horrible, but there you go. That's what they're doing. And in the brain, lots and lots of genes are being differentially expressed during this time. So they're essentially just becoming a lot less sensitive to stimulation. They're basically just, going sort of log mode, just waiting it out. So that's the brain. In the heart, bearded dragons undergo some changes to kind of improve its function during hibernation. So the heart muscle cells actually temporarily increase in size, which gives the heart more strength. This is supposed to help them survive the stress of hibernation. They also activate some pathways which maintain the structure of the muscle cells. I guess because it's not being used so much, it needs to be maintained.
This one's a little bit odd, isn't it? So it's hinted that a sort of a more muscly heart is helpful, but they're doing less with it, essentially. And it's, I guess, a balance between sort of strength and capacity, potentially.
Well, yeah, because the heart is a muscle, right? And so that's why like cardiovascular activity is good for you, because you're sort of, you damage it very slightly. Your fibers are being like knocked about and torn a little bit when you're doing cardiovascular exercise. And then in response, your body builds it back up, is my understanding of how exercise kind of works generally. So presumably if their heart is kind of doing less, they need to put more in terms of gene expression into the kind of maintenance of those cells in order for them not to kind of atrophy during periods of non-use. Does that make
that does make sense. Yeah. I do wonder whether it's also just a sort of relative shift. As in, well, blood has to keep pumping. There's nothing else sort of helping it along, so we'll just put all the effort into the heart.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It
feels
one.
A really counterintuitive one, but...
counterintuitive because the heart is working less hard, but kind of intuitive because the heart...
needs additional protection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the heart. Muscle wastage. Genes which prevent muscle wastage, these are upregulated during hibernation. So... I guess a similar thing. They aren't really using their muscles, so there's a potential for them to kind of shrink and become unnecessary. The body just doesn't commit to building or keeping things if it doesn't need them. However, you're going to need those muscles when you wake up. So genes which prevent muscle wastage get upregulated. Also, apparently, formation of new mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. Apparently, those are upregulated as well, which also serves to help their muscle strength. So few extra mitochondria being produced there, which sort of stops the muscles from becoming weak. And one thing which they sort of highlighted in quite a big way was that messenger RNA, so these are the molecules that contain instructions that direct cells to make proteins. So I think if you go into hibernation and you don't have messenger RNA, you might need to create new messenger RNA when they come out of hibernation.
Yes, I think that's exactly it. Yes.
But they have a mechanism to defend against that. They essentially keep their old messenger RNA in reserve. So their messenger RNA almost itself goes through hibernation and just kind of waits it out. And this allows them,
they just keep a hold of it for a bit.
as soon as they wake up, they have messenger RNA ready to go to start encoding stuff immediately. And what that means is that they're pretty much primed for rapid response from hibernation.
Yes.
Which it sounds like mammals don't have. That was the impression I got, is that is like a thing of that reptiles have that maybe mammals don't, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But essentially what it means is that they can be rapidly aroused from hibernation. So if you were to like lift up a log or, dig a hole and find a lizard and start slapping it around while it was hibernating, rather than being a dopey lizard without any hope of defending itself, they can kind of snap into action relatively quickly and defend themselves from threats.
I think it's some mammals have it.
Ah, okay.
So free-lined ground squirrels, little brown bats, and wood frogs seem to have it. Bears and fat-tailed dwarf lemurs, not. So it's one of those ones that isn't synonymous with other groups, but has been documented in others. Your
maybe
classic
not
bear doesn't have it, for example.
Maybe not such an issue for bears because they're like under less threat once they're fully sized. I don't know.
Yeah, it certainly seems like, so they have a wonderful table of comparing the different sort of characteristics popping up in bearded dragon hibernation versus others. And the bears sort of have a remarkably limited arsenal. So they've got the sort of slight protections in the brain that you were talking about, so neurons don't get sort of burnt out. And they have a modulation of metabolic genes, as they call it there. Bearded dragons have both of those and a whole suite of other stuff. Bears don't have all those additions. So bear hibernation is sort of more focused on a couple of mechanisms rather than this sort of broad suite. And I could only sort of guess that maybe that's a cold-blooded, warm-blooded sort of exotherm, endotherm thing. I don't know.
Yeah. But crucially, I think what this paper does serve to uncover is that if you go down all the way to the molecular level, the tiny, tiny molecules, and look at the bearded dragon's genes, there are a variety of strategies there which help them to survive hibernation.
Yeah.
Protecting the heart, protecting the brain, protecting the muscles. And they do that by regulating gene expression. It also helps to manage stress at the cellular level. So they're sort of protecting themselves. And as you said, protecting brain from overstimulation. Nice strong heart. Muscles are still going to work. And then because they have this messenger RNA waiting in the wings, they can then wake up relatively rapidly and defend themselves against threats.
Right.
And I read a press release from the authors of this paper, which massively helped me to understand it. And they said they likened it to Smaug in The Hobbit. They said, remember how Smaug wakes up really quickly when Bilbo arrives? Well, that's because of this messenger RNA mechanism, which is found in bearded dragons. I was like, yeah, nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That tracks. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's incredible how sort of molecular some of these changes are. Like having the messenger RNA just sort of hanging around ready to go. That must come with some sort of cost somewhere along the lines or something, because there's got to be some sort of trade-off, I would imagine, because otherwise why wouldn't everything just keep it hanging around? So I don't know what those trade-offs are. And, there's little mentions, there's mentions in the paper of sort of other proteins dealing with how, the DNA sort of manipulated and moved around and sort of ready for transcription and stuff that are also subtly different from non-hibernators. So there's a lot of, it really does paint a picture of a whole suite of interlocking and sort of interconnected solutions that are kind of remarkable that the bearded dragon has so many when other hibernating species only have a few of this arsenal of options. But also that they're very, very similar, if not identical, in mammals, frogs, bearded dragon. So amphibians, reptiles, mammals. Like, that's a big suite of of diversity to have very similar solutions.
Yeah. Makes you wonder about the kind of ancestral origins of hibernation. There must be stuff out there about that.
Yeah, or just incredible sort of molecular convergence. It doesn't have to be an ancestral thing, does it? It could be either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Earth used to be more hot, didn't it? It used to be more hot. So maybe hibernation only became a thing more recently. Who knows? Maybe it was more... What's the other side?
Hot bits, cold bits.
Yeah. Estivation's cold?
Yeah, maybe.
Let's not go there.
Words.
Yeah. But anyway, bearded dragons. I really like bearded dragons. Always reminds me of my cousin's bearded dragon. Rest in peace, Chester. What a guy. Yeah, they're cool animals. And apparently, yeah, pretty insane at a molecular level. Really ambitious paper. I'm not going to pretend that we understand the methods that they employed.
Not even close. I recommend people who have more in-depth interest in the particulars go look it up, because it is very good.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, shall we move on to our species of the bi-week?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We got a paper by Li, Zhu, Zhao, Huang, Wu, Yang, and Zhang, and Mo. Sorry, Mo, nearly missed you. A new species of the genus Achalinus from southwest Hunan Province, China, published in ZooKeys. So, we're talking about the family Xenodermatidae.
Ah, those with alien-like skin.
Yes, this is a family containing probably some of the world's strangest looking snakes, as you just alluded to.
Up there, yeah.
Named after the ancient Greek xeno, which means strange, and derma, which means skin. Strange skinned snakes. And it contains the dragon snakes, among others, which we've talked about a few times recently because they've had a few species described. But we are today talking about a genus called Achalinus, which is actually the most diverse genus of the family Xenodermatidae. It contained 27 recognized species prior to this paper, so this will make it 28. Snakes from this genus come from eastern and southeastern Asia, where it ranges from northern Vietnam to southwestern China and partly into Japan. The genus dips its toe into Japan. 18 of the species have been discovered in the past 5 years. With this one, it'll be 19. So
it's a fresh and up-and-coming genus then, isn't it?
Oh, big style, mate. It's undergoing a bit of a taxonomic discovery boom. It's an exciting time to be a part of Xenodermatidae. And during some recent herpetological surveys in southwest Hunan in China, 3 Achalinus snake specimens were collected in Tongdao County and Nanshan National Park. And they had a look at the genes, they had a look at the morphology, and they decided, this is a new species. It's different than its congeners. And they've described it, and they've called it Achalinus nanshanensis, which is a cool name, just means living in Nanshan National Park, where it's described from. Makes sense, easy to remember. And what do they call it?
The Nanshan odd-scaled snake is the suggested English common name.
Yes, which is quite nice. Odd-scaled snake. We like that. It's got a bit of a ring to it. Nanshan odd-scaled snake. It's got a little bit of alliteration in a way, which is quite cool. And what does it look like?
It's kind of...
If you had to describe it in 3 words. 3 words, Ben. That's what I'm giving you.
Iridescent, navy, collared.
That's really good. You did well there. You really, synthesized. That's all the description we need. No, it is quite a brown though. It's sort of slightly navy bluish and quite iridescent, but also a little bit on the brown side. But it does have the odd scales, which are kind of, it's named after.
I couldn't think of a word that really covered blue and brown together. The iridescenciness gives it sort of a two-tone feel to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, kind of. Are they keeled, these scales? They look like they might be keeled. Yeah, strongly keeled. So they got the little keels on them like a boat, which probably means this thing is either underground dweller or watery based. Those are the kind of times when things get keeled scales. Looking at the habitat and the description of where they were caught, actually, it probably is watery. Before we go on to that, we'll stick with what they look like. The yellow neck collar you mentioned has a neck collar, which is, a common feature.
Very Crates-like, Rhabdophis-like.
Yep. Asclepian snake-like. If there's a juvenile, they got a little yellow collar. Yeah.
It's a bit it's a classic. Many
it's
snakes like a good little collar.
Yeah, but it is striking with the full brown / navy blue body coloration and then the yellow neck collar and the shiny little black head.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, and I certainly, it would make me think twice about picking it up. It's not venomous, or at least not significantly medically venomous. There's nothing here about the venom, but if there is any, but it looks like it might be because of that yellow collar. It's a little bit startling, as a predatory animal, or at least an omnivore. It would make me think twice about picking that up and putting it in my mouth. So that's obviously effective. And yeah, talking about where they found it, they've found a few specimens sort of 300 meters above sea level and beyond, up to about 1,600. So, some altitude to the habits of these snakes. They were all found at night. 2 of them were found near a mountain stream, air temperature about 18, so quite cool. And then, they were sort of near shrubs in a subtropical broad-leaved evergreen forest, which looks really nice in the pictures.
It does, near some shrubs, apparently.
There's some shrubs. There's like a little bridge across a river with some big rocks in it and some lush vegetation in the background. It looks a little bit mountainous. And then another one was found in a bamboo forest near a stream. Bamboo forests, bit of a weird one. Tends to be quite hard to find reptiles in bamboo forests, I feel like. But these ones are in there. So
there's a lot of types of bamboo, so I assume there's a lot of types of bamboo forests too.
That ruins the generalization though, Ben.
It does, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, fair enough. But yes, one of them was found in a bamboo forest. So yeah.
About 360 millimeters SVL too, for size-wise. So, not monstrous, but a decent-sized snake.
Any indication of what they eat? Don't think there was there?
Not that I saw, so I suppose it's simply up to us to make wild guesses.
Frogs.
I mean, right?
It's going to be frogs.
That's where my money would be.
Yeah. But, hey, who knows? Could be lizards too. Could be anything else.
Throw some bugs in there too.
Could be bugs. Could be fish. Bugs and fish, I feel like less likely. But yeah. Either way, we've got a nice new species of snake, Achalinus nanshanensis, from Hunan in China. Yeah. Welcome to scientific literature, our little friend, and hopefully in time we'll learn more about this species and be able to come back to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, have we got any other business for this episode?
I do. I have a paper about scrub pythons trying to eat people.
And this is because, Paul, who is the Patreon who chose this episode, also expressed an interest in scrub pythons. And so we did look and see if there was a paper about scrub pythons that we could cover, but there weren't any recent ones that we haven't already covered. So we found this paper from 2021, Ben, Biting Off More Than You Could Chew.
Yep.
By Natush et al. So what's the story here?
So they're radio tracking some scrub pythons, and one makes its way into a house and tries to presumably eat somebody. The snake does not succeed, because basically the snake is just trying to eat their leg. What's really weird, so they take the snake away. It's a track snake, and they release it 200 meters away. The snake returns to the house and incapacitates their dog. The dog is resuscitated and okay. Snake is then removed further away.
Wow.
Absolutely bizarre.
Pretty patient homeowners. This is in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Australians are realistic about their reptiles.
Well, I mean, snake's gonna snake. But
yeah. Do you think it was after the dog the whole time and it was just like, dog? Wait, no, leg, a human.
I mean, I don't know. It's a hard one to sort of work out. We covered that whole paper of like looking at snakes that had died while consuming something because they'd either eaten something too big or something too pointy or something not dead enough. And it does seem like something that happens again and again and again. Why? I don't know. Like, just not comprehending what it was trying to eat was part of something bigger is a possibility. Thinking that what it was trying to eat was, like a separate entity to the rest of the rest of the person. I don't know. They offer a few sort of suggestions like that, but
I mean, from the snake's perspective, right? If you go into someone's house and they've got a dog, you can smell the dog, right? So, not knocking dogs, but yeah, dogs have a smell for sure. So I could imagine that for a snake entering a house, it's going to be pretty overwhelmed by the smell of dog potentially. And if the person's been cuddling the dog, they might smell like a dog. I have a very friendly pet common boa that I've had for many, many years. And the only time he's ever bitten anyone, my friend Dev was around my house holding him. And I was like, not even paying attention because those two are good friends. And, and I turned around and he's like, Callie's just bit me on the shoulder. And I was like, shut up, man, it didn't happen. And he's like, no, it just happened. Look, I'm bleeding. And I was like, oh. And then I was like, wait, what were you doing before you got here? And he was like, oh, yeah, I was cuddling my hamsters. And I was like, well, you brought this upon yourself.
I was covered in the stench of hamsters.
Exactly. So I would guess.
Just very well seasoned. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what it suggests to me. I mean, how big was the snake? Does it say in the paper? A transmitter in it?
The snake, 4.6 kilos is the measurement they give at the beginning.
It's not even that big.
I mean,
that's less than the weight of a human leg. That's a human leg below the knee, if that.
That's sort of what they're sort of getting at, is it probably shouldn't have even tried.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly buy what you're suggesting with the sort of misplaced scent sort of thing, and really sort of it sounds to me, and I think they suggest this towards the end of the paper too, is trying to work out what cues these snakes are using for deciding what to eat or not would go a long way to explaining this. So what I'm hearing is the need for some like feeding trials with various sort of accompanying stimuli to work out what scrub pythons want to eat.
Yep, get on it. So imagine if they did that and then they used human stench as one of the things, and actually snakes were like super attracted to love munching it. That'd be
it would open up a lot of questions, wouldn't it?
It would, wouldn't it? Yeah. Very good. Have you seen that video that I don't know how old it is. It only came across my feed like in the last couple of weeks, where there's this family in Australia and a carpet python is trying to eat their guinea pig.
I've not seen. No, I'm kind of grateful I haven't.
So the little girl's like looking for the guinea pig in the garden. She can't find it, and then suddenly she's got her hands in the bushes and she pulls out this like white guinea pig, but attached to it is like a fully grown carpet python.
Oh, no.
And so she grabs the carpet python by the tail and just starts swinging it, and like it's kind of comical, but like she ends up because the carpet python in its mouth, it has the guinea pig at the end, right, and it's not letting go willingly. So as she's swinging this snake, the guinea pig just gets dinged off this like bit of furniture. But in the end, I can't remember if she gets it off, or the dad comes over and helps out as well, and then he just like slings the snake back in the hedge the other side. But yeah, pretty funny. But the snake appears to be unharmed. Like, credit to them, they didn't actually hurt the snake. Really, they just sort of shoved it, threw it away.
Probably feeling a bit queasy at the very least.
But yeah, pretty ridiculous video.
I mean, keep your guinea pigs safe, my guys.
Yeah, that should be the take home, right? Like, if you live in Australia, because even in urban areas, there's like, I mean, if you're in the range of a carpet python, they're pretty tolerant of that kind of existence. So, yeah.
Well, how far would you let a guinea pig roam, even in the UK?
Well, my only experience with guinea pigs is looking after my neighbours, and me and my brother had the bright idea to let it out and let it roam around the garden. It went under the fence and into the woods, and it was chaos trying to get it back.
Yeah,
so
well,
for me personally,
there you go.
Yeah, for me personally, it probably
if the
remain in the
escape attempt doesn't get it, a red kite or a buzzard might.
Yeah.
They're not exactly. They're pretty prey animal, guinea pigs, especially domestic ones.
Yeah, they're pretty hapless, aren't they?
Pretty chill.
They always seem pretty scared. But yeah, okay, cool. So the only other thing I wanted to say was that we have 2 new patrons. So thanks very much,
thank
Adam and Miles. Yeah, really much appreciated. Big ups yourselves. And yeah, I haven't got anything else to add. Have you?
No, I just had the scrub pythons trying to eat people thing.
Yeah, crazy story. Mental. That same python just
That's what I love
again.
it. Python got moved away. I'm like, no. I ain't done here. I'm going to make the 200 meter way move back.
Yeah, but you can find us on social media, or you can get in touch if you want to correct us or ask a question, herphighlights@gmail.com. Thanks, as always, to all the Patreons, patreon.com/herphighlights. And catch you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.